Sometimes the technology has a mind of its own. Okay. Right. Yes, we're live on YouTube, and I want to welcome you all, ladies and gentlemen, to what we on the flyer refer to as the fourth installment of our monthly In Conversation series with eminent senior academics and scholars, accomplished individuals who, in their own right, have either blazed the trail or borne the torch of academic progress forward, or community leadership as well, without gainsaying. But because we had to skip the March edition, so this will be numerically the third installment in the series. So today we have Professor Kola Abimbola, a full professor at Howard University, whom I will allow to introduce himself as he goes ahead in conversation with our brother, Mr. Ayankoso Sahid Ademola, whom I will also allow to introduce himself as the conversation starts. So there will be room for questions and answer, ample time for questions and answer. So the format we normally take is that the moderator and the guest will engage in a conversation for about 30, 45 minutes and then allow the audience to ask questions to interact with the guest as well. In all, we expect to be here for no more than 90 minutes. But I believe that this is going to be an interesting conversation today, as always. I can see that Professor Shionkonade is here with us. Usually, I would give him, some minutes at the end to also give some, to also intervene from his wealth of experience. So we'll be looking forward to that. But for now, let me hand over to the moderator for tonight, who is going to have what I believe will be a very insightful and engaging conversation with Professor Kola Abimbola. So over to you, Mr. Ayankoso.
Thank you very much, my brother. Distinguished guests, erudite scholars, other eminent personalities here present, ladies and gentlemen. I want to use this opportunity to welcome us all to the In Conversation series of Oyo Scholars Congress, the third edition, the third in the series. And the theme of today's episode is managing an academic career. And we have with us an erudite professor, a professor of note in person of Professor Kola Abimbola, as earlier introduced. To start with, Professor Kola Abimbola, may we know who Professor Kola Abimbola is?
Thank you so much. Adupeo, it is a great honor for me to be here today. And I thank everyone and the Oyo Scholars Association for making this possible. There are so many ways by which we can think about scholarship, but the real most important thing about scholarship is that it is a society, and organizations like this bring together all of us so that we can generate enough significant in society. So my name is Kola Abimbola, Kola Oguniyi Abimbola. I am the Ajagun Ogun Agbaye. I think I'm a professor of philosophy, but philosophy is just what I do. My interest is primarily in Ifa and in how we organize and regulate society on the basis of rules, principles, and ethics, which I look at from a philosophical point of view and from an Ifa point of view. Adupe.
Now, it interests us to know how you started your academic journey. Please, would you like to share that with us?
Thank you so much. As if I put on one of my hats, the philosophical hat, history, we often make the mistake of the mistake that history is just about the facts. We started this discussion just about 9 minutes ago. In that 9 minutes, there has been at least 1 trillion events that have transpired. So if we want to tell the history of how this event started, which of those hats are we going to use to tell the history? History 1, the history of facts, is always determined by the theoretical lenses through which you are viewing the world. So from my own point of view, my education started when I was about 3.5 years old. I went to an event, a Babalawo event, with my father, the Awishe Agbaye, and one of his friends was chanting Ifa. This was maybe in the early 70s, late 60s, maybe around 69, 70 or thereabout. Babaduro Kogun was then maybe about 45 years old. But whenever Babaduro Kogun got up to chant, everyone would be saying, Baba, 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 it's not your turn yet. Please sit down. And people who are older than Babaduro Kogun are referring to him as Baba. And when Babaduro Kogun started chanting, he chanted poems from the same Odu for over an hour. And I decided then, I want to be able to chant Ifa like Babaduro Kogun. So I started studying Ifa honestly and with focus and zeal when I was about 3 or so years old. So that's how my academic career started.
Thank you, Prof. Now, while you were introducing yourself, I felt your introduction wouldn't have been completed without mentioning that you are an illustrious son of the renowned Professor Abimbola. Now, how did Baba influence your choice of career? In what way did Baba, Professor Abimbola, in what way did he influence your choice of career?
I like examples. Let me give you one. When I was 14, going on 15, you know, in Nigeria then, to go to university, you get the JAMB form, you select your first, second, and third choice of university and courses. And I got the JAMB form, looked at it. Something I'd known all my life dawned on me. There was no university I could go to in Nigeria to study Ifa. So I told my dad, you know, I'm not going to university, it's a waste of my time. I've been studying Ifa all my life. I can't even chant Ifa like Babaduro Kogun Berekogbe Dodobale Kigba, who was reputed for being able to chant 200 poems from each of the 256 Odu. So I told my dad, I'm not going to university, it's a waste of my time. He was the dean of the Faculty of Arts at Ife then. He said, okay, all right, let's think about it. After about 4 days, he came up with a suggestion. Obafemi Awolowo University, which was then University of Ife, just started a program called the Certificate in Yoruba Oral Literature, which was a mixture of university professors will teach you Yoruba language, how to analyze literature, and then you have the choice of a Babalawo, Yanifa, or an Egungun priest or priestess to learn from that genre. He said, okay, you've been studying all your Ifa from me all your life. You do this program at least, you study Ifa from another person, and you know, if you decide you are not going to go to university after that, you have at least a post-high school education. So I did that certificate in Yoruba oral literature that year. And that was the year that I became apprentice to Babalola Adeboye Ifatogun. And that year I stumbled upon a book in my dad's study called the Socratic Dialogues. And then I made the connection between Ifa and philosophy. And that was how I ended up in philosophy. The point I'm making really is this. All through my life and with all of my siblings, the Awishe has encouraged us, even indulged us to follow our passions. And even when it seemed counterproductive, I had all the support I wanted. Even when I decided at age 14 and a half, I'm not going to go to college, he allowed that until I realized and found my own calling. I think that that's the most important influence at every point in my life, even when I'm making decisions that look so left field. He supported it. Another example, first year of my philosophy degree in Ife. He spent the equivalent of his whole salary for 1 month buying me the Encyclopedia of Philosophy, 4 volumes that just came out. So,
yeah. Thank you, Professor. That means you had the leverage from your background, being a son of a professor. Then, of course, being the son of Awishe Agbaye. May I ask you, sir, that are there roles that divination play in choice of career? Why I'm asking this question, you have been very vast as IFA authority before you even told the part of philosophy and law. Now, did you do any consultation that eventually led you into taking degrees in law and philosophy?
absolutely. I can say with absolute certainty that any important decision in my life, I divine, I follow the advice of Ifa, and the few times I haven't followed the advice of Ifa or at least divined before I took a step, I've often turned out in disaster. So Ifa ni afinimana or Maraye, which I translate into English as Ifa is the GPS of life. Every
Thank you
important
very
decision in your life, consult Ifa for a clear path.
Thank you very much. A jẹ́ pé ẹ̀yin náà máa ń kí ní ọmọ ẹ̀rìndínlógún Ifá àgbọn ò ṣeé dá adá Ifá rẹ̀ akúnilọ́wọ́ mọ́mọ́mọ́ àjíǹde ara máa jẹ́ o Ifá ó gbè. Can you please tell what propelled you to taking a second doctoral degree in law of evidence and criminal justice, having studied philosophy ab initio?
Okay. Again, as with all good things in life, it's not almost all the time not about how well you plan. It's about one of my mentors, Baba Roland Abiodun at Amherst College, whom I've had the pleasure of knowing since I was about 5 years old. He always talks about one Baba Forest Site from Owo. This Baba, he hears people talking about foresight. So Baba thought it was forest site. So we say, you need to have forest site. It's always about forest site. Okay. When I started my philosophy degree at Ife, the very first philosophy class I took was by my good teacher and now friend, Baba Bewaji, who is in Jamaica. And it was a course on African philosophy. And then I had a course by Dr. Dipo Fashina on Introduction to the Problems of Philosophy. And then I fell in love with logic. I studied all the logic possible under the sun. Every semester, me and 3 of my friends, the Mr Ibijua, who is now a professor at Lautech, Oluwasesan Iwayemi Roberts, who is in Texas, we will always petition the university. They'll provide more logic. And when I decided to do my PhD, I decided to go to the London School of Economics to study history and philosophy of science. But as I was about a year from completing my philosophy PhD, something happened in my mind. I said, I did not want to go to university initially because there wasn't anything to study that looked like Ifa. Now I am writing about theories of light. I am reading the optics. What has this got to do with Ifa? It's so far removed. And then I decided that when you look at Western societies, law plays a role that is similar to what religion plays in African societies. Law is the mechanism on the basis of which interpersonal human interaction is organized in Western society. That's what Ifa did in Orisha society. I decided, well, okay, if I really want to understand what this thing they call law is about, I better study it. So I enrolled for an LLB and then went on to do a PhD.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you very much. Of course, really, there are some other questions bothering our mind. Or is it a fact that academic life should be well rested on well-balanced tripod? Teaching, research, and community service. What is your take on this?
My take on it is that that's all about contemporary mumbo jumbo. When there are so many people involved in any kind of field or profession, we set up structures by which we can assess. And for whatever reason, those so-called 3 pillars are what academic life is judged by now: teaching, research, and community service. But I know very many teachers, very many professors who excel at teaching. If you go to a class being taught by my great teacher, Dr. Oladipo Fashina, if you go into Dr. Fashina's class and you come out and you are not filled with knowledge, nothing else can explain that to you. In Dr. Fashina's class, it will be as if he just opened up your mind and all his words are just going in. Even the most complex thing, he explains it. Not everyone can do what Dr. Fashina does when it comes to teaching. I know some people who, before they finish one sentence, they will have started 10. When you sit in their class, people will be dozing off. But when they sit down and write, when you pick up their book from page 1 to the end, you will want to leave it. So strictly speaking, not everyone can be equally good in all those 3 aspects. But because of the fact that academia is now saturated, we need to find ways by which we decide whom we are going to appoint and whom we are not going to appoint. We need ways by which we are going to determine promotion. We've standardized. And standardization may often lead to a situation where a common error might be perpetrated all around.
Thank you very much, Professor. I really appreciate this session. Now, how do I maintain a balance among these 3 components to attain optimum career development as an academic? Knowing too well that it is by these components that my promotions and developments are determined.
Sometimes balance is good. Sometimes it's not. Balance, just means balance, right? If you are someone who is an excellent writer, right? A good example is Professor Tony Falola. He can whip up an article or a book in no time. While some people are still configuring how they are going to do the outline, Baba Falola has churned out an article, right? Or think of someone like Professor Wole Soyinka, right? When people are thinking of whatever, he'll churn out a play, right? So my own view is this: know thyself, for an unexamined mind is not worth living. And here is what I mean by that. People are different. Whatever institution you are in, know the rules of what is required for promotion, know your strengths and your weaknesses. Your strengths, you can take them for granted, work on the things you are weak at to make sure you make just above the minimum to be able to get to the next level. And what your strengths are, just excel. A good example for me is that when it comes to writing anything to do with philosophy or Ifa, when I'm writing, it's as if I'm possessed. I'll think about it for a week or month or whatever. When I start writing, I just sit down, bum, 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 bum. 10 hours, I've turned down an article. Most of the time, my first draft is my last draft. Many people, some people, they have to write 1 page a day, 2 pages a day. That doesn't work for me. Once I know where I'm going, I just sit down, boom, right. First draft is always last draft. You need to know yourself and understand the rules of the institution you are in and work to ensure that you deliver according to your skills and the rules that are on the ground.
Professor, you are blowing my mind. Your answers have been very philosophical. Are there yardstick with which I can gauge my career development as an academic? You say I should know myself. I'm ready to know myself. Now, for self-evaluation now, are there yardstick to gauge my career development?
Absolutely. Remember that yardsticks require yards. What I mean by that, to measure anything, you need a standard against which you are measuring it against. My own suggestion to every academic, whether young or old, is that you should always have a moving goalpost. Have a mentor, the idea of whom you want to be. Have a plan for your life. What do I want to do in short term? Short term should be about 2 to 3 years. Medium term, about 5 to 6 years. Long term, about 10 years. And measure that against who your mentors are. Speak to your mentors and then see whether those yardsticks are achievable. If they are too easily achievable, it's not good enough. Your goalpost should be something that always forces you to work hard. And with the moment you see that you are trying to get the goalpost, move it up a bit. It's time to raise to another level. So the short answer to that question is 1, have a good mentor or some mentors who form your image of who you want to be. And as with everything, in my own experience in life, every single person I've chosen as a mentor in my life, some I knew, some I did not, just right there. Academics are usually generous with their time. Even if it's someone you don't know at all, shoot them an email. You'll be surprised.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Now, there is a popular axiom that says, jack of all trades, masters of none.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can a self-effort yield a robust research output in contemporary research environment?
Self-effort.
Self-effort, can it yield a robust research output?
What do you mean by self-effort?
Not any form of collaboration. I want to do it all alone.
The short answer is no. But here is the long answer. Okay. As an academic, it's always important to test your ideas before you put it out in the public. Once it's written, it's there for life. You cannot make any change to it. Right? So collaboration should be involved at every stage of your research. Having good friends and colleagues who can read materials for you and give you feedback. Okay. Even when you are publishing solo, it's not really self-effort because you've benefited from the experience and knowledge and suggestions of people whom you value. Okay. But if you're thinking of self-research in terms of don't publish alone, it depends on your field. There are some fields that value collaborative publication, where to the extent that they even perpetrate fraudulent ideas, right? Someone will be the one who wrote the whole paper. Others will just put their name on it, even if they did not contribute anything to it, right? So again, know your field, but in terms of the quality of your research, in terms of the quality of your outputs, in terms of the reach to which your research will get, it's always important to bounce your ideas off of mentors, colleagues, and even test them out at conferences before you put them in print.
Thank you very much. Now, you are a global person. You are a world-class professor. By global standard, is there a limit to which a researcher can collaborate?
No, there is no limit. There should be no limit. Ọgbọ́n òpin síbì kan. Good knowledge is not stuck in one place. There is no end. So there are like-minded people in Brazil, in Australia, in Tasmania, on the moon, who can accelerate your research. It's a time to think Nike. Just do it. Get in touch. Go.
Thank you, sir. Now, back home, here in Nigeria, research publications for academic purpose are rated, let me say generally, research publications for academic purpose are rated based on impact factor, instead of the impact of the contribution of the knowledge to national development. How do you view this?
Again, the problem is standardization, right? Oftentimes when we standardize, we use the wrong and incorrect standard, okay? So let's take something as simple as impact, okay? How is the idea of impact, as is now generally embedded in academia, really has some kind of scientific or socio-scientific bias. There are some fields that do not have impact in that way, period, right? So again, standardization is the key problem. And even though we have this kind of standardizations, all that will mean is that impact will have to be measured slightly differently from in academia. So impact might be decided now by how many citations there is for your article on Google or something like that, as opposed to whether it really contributes to the development of society. Yeah. So,
thank you. Professor, I don't know, but I am eager to ask you this, sir. Now, synergy between the GAN and the TAN is supposed to be the key that drives national development in a sane climate. Now, to what extent does Nigeria hinge our prosperity as a nation on the research we do back home here?
the main problem with Nigeria is that ọmọ olówó ṣáájú oníntabàtà fún tìkẹyìn. What I mean by that is this. Our ideas, our educational system, and almost everything we do across most parts of Africa, I believe almost every part of Africa, is still colonized. We are still not developing unique ideas of our own that is fundamental to how our society develops. So let's take one very simple example. How many legal systems are there in Nigeria? If you ask even lawyers that, they'll say, oh, well, do you mean, first of all, people will be confused by my question. Are you talking about federal, state, and local? No. How many legal systems are there in Nigeria? That question is a loaded one. All questions are really loaded. Every question has what we call a presupposition of the question. Without that presupposition, that question is not meaningful. Okay? how many legal systems there are in Nigeria assumes that we have an agreed conception of what a legal system is. The problem with Nigeria and most parts of Africa is that we have rampant conflict of laws. Nigeria has about 6,000 legal systems that are not on the same level. If the Alaafin of Oyo decides and rules on a case in Oyo, you cannot take it to Ibadan to be retried. You cannot take it to Iwo to be retried. All of those are different legal systems that doesn't really mesh together as one. So, but in the image of many Nigerians, we just think of this as traditional institutions. And then coupled with the fact that the minds of most people are attuned to thinking of criminal law as the best example of law, even though criminal law only affects about 5% of your life. There is inheritance law, there's family law, there's child law, there's procedural law, right? All these so-called traditional institutions have real life impact in their own domains. So the problem with Nigeria and the problem with Africa is that we are always perpetually starting from the point of view of thinking about education in a foreign language that has a different mapping of the way the world is. If we were to be having this forum in Yoruba, for example, the questions that will come to mind will be different. The way in which we'll engage with real life in Yoruba societies will be different. So my suggestion is that the main problem with Africa is that we are still choosing the wrong languages to conduct our primary intellectual life in. If we were to switch to local languages, academia will be far more important to real societies in Africa.
Professor, I am most grateful for the insights you are giving us. Now, I want to leave Nigeria alone now. Then I want to carry my cross and advance my academic career. Now, what are the strategies that I need to put in place if I want to advance academically? If I want to advance my career.
If one is based in Nigeria, right. So the answer to that question will depend on the locale of the person. If one is based in Nigeria, for example, we all know that Nigeria currently, there's big problems with funds for research, even access to materials. One of the things I would suggest is, first of all, join a good network, like the Oyo Scholars Association, right? If you send an email to anyone in your field who is in the United States or Britain, say, my name is so and so and so. I'm from the Oyo Scholars Association. I've read so and so on your work. This is what my research is in. Are there any books or materials you can suggest? Are there any conferences that I can come to? Networking is my answer to that. This is where networks become very, very important, especially in situations where resources are scarce and expensive.
Well, sir, as a patriot, somebody who believes in a renewed hope and a better, a more prosperous Nigeria. Now, if I'm in Nigeria, now how do I position myself to strategically explore, recognize, and utilize career opportunities? Because you have said Nigeria is another kettle of fish when it comes to assessing opportunities.
Yeah. First main criteria for any academic is to, of course, excel in your field. Make sure that when I was at the University of Leicester, I used to be one of the career advisors for further education. And I'll pull up my laptop, pull up the image of Wole Soyinka, Isaac Newton. I'll ask the student, how many heads does this guy have? One. How many heads does this one have? One. I pull up the image of Nancy Cartwright, one of my mentors in philosophy of science. How many heads does she have? One. If you got into Leicester, you can excel. You just have to know your strengths, your weaknesses, and strategize in line with what you know your defects are and compensate for them. So to excel in any domain, anywhere you are in the world, you always need to do a kind of risk assessment analysis. Know your strengths, know your weaknesses, write on your strengths, plug in your defects. And with Nigeria, there are extra challenges for scholars, which will include things like access to funds and access to research material. But we thank Obatala for the fact that we now have the spider of the world, Itakun Agbaye, through which you can just email anyone to get assistance if need be.
Thank you very much. Growing up, Prof, we experienced exchange programs, expatriates coming to Nigeria to teach in terms of exchange programs. In recent past, there are sponsorship for foreign studies abroad, TED Fund, specifically in tertiary institutions in Nigeria, sponsor scholars to study abroad, believing that once they acquire skills, they are coming back home to plow back their experience. And that will better the system. And of course, it is capacity development for national prosperity. How do you now perceive TED Fund saying no to foreign studies and scholarship abroad? What is your take on this?
So they are saying no to foreign
studies, sponsorship abroad for foreign study.
So I'm not aware of that. So can you explain a bit more? So these funds are based abroad and they are not allowing Nigerians, or Nigerians are rejecting foreign funds?
Premised on the forex, the exchange rates, the federal government has placed a ban on scholars who are interested in going abroad for further studies, master's, PhD. You better stay back home and secure admission in any of our foremost universities and have that studies. And knowing that, should I go ahead, sir?
That's a stupid idea. Simple.
Okay. Simple.
There's no way we can assess it. It's stupid. So can anyone really say that everything we need to do anything is there in Nigeria? No.
It's a known fact, sir, that Nigeria is losing huge human resources to developed countries of the world under different appellations. Brain drain, Japa syndrome, and a host of others. But the death of infrastructures and poor staff welfare in our ivory towers are not helping the matters. Where do we go from here as a nation? Studying the dynamics.
There's a Yoruba proverb that èèyàn fẹ̀ tẹ́lẹ̀ ń palàpalàpà. Okay. Someone has some skin rashes. They are focusing on fixing the skin rash, even though they're in danger of leprosy. Right? That's like a knee-jerk reaction to the real fundamental problem of Nigeria, which is that we do not have a democratic system that is suited for the culture of Nigeria. No African country has one. Nigeria has rampant conflict of laws that are not meshed together. Any part of Nigeria you go, if you want to run for local government chairperson, state governor, or even president, You go around going to see all these traditional rulers and indigenous people, and there are some parts of Nigeria where the traditional ruler will just say, we are voting for X. That's what almost everyone would vote for. Democracy as it operates in the US will not work in Nigeria because the structure is different, the people are different, the cultures are different. We need a radical, fundamental constitutional change that moves away from copying a system just as it is in one Western world and tinkering with it to suit the fact that Nigeria is predominantly, incorrigibly, unapologetically ethnic based. Under no condition will I sacrifice my identity as a Yoruba person and just say I'm a Nigerian. It might be easy for Americans to do that, but not in Nigeria. We need a democratic system that recognizes all of these complexly rich, intricate ethnic differences we have, including their structures. It's only when we deal with that that we'll be able to make good decisions about the best way forward for academia in Nigeria.
Prof.
Yes.
Please, will you allow me to narrate my encounter with some of my colleagues at work yesterday in Yoruba? Ẹ̀yin àgbàlagbà ènìyàn ọmọ tó bá pawó nìyá òun. I have a colleague who had put in 13 years teaching in a secondary school, and he has put in another 10 years working in a university, now a university, then a college of education. The revelation had it that some of the properties he acquired while he was just an ordinary classroom teacher, he had sold. And of course, now his earnings cannot buy him those properties again. Now, the issue in contention is, he was now saying being a civil servant in Nigeria is a curse, that it is better you are being neo-colonized, be a slave in America or UK, than being a civil servant here in Nigeria. And you know, of course, lecturing, teaching is a calling, right? If you really want to dole out and give stuff, you must be motivated from within to do that. Now, summarily, that will form the basis of my last question. Summarily, how would you describe an accomplished or a fulfilled academic?
Academia is a profession we choose for life, right? Any profession you do, you're engaged in, your mark of success will be in that profession. How far did you get to the highest level? Did you make full professorship? Did you make associate professor or senior lecturer or whatever the character? And did you strive as much as possible to get to that height? But at the same time, a person must eat. Whatever profession you engage in should be enough for you to be able to pay your bills and take care of your expenses and, take care of your family. So unfortunately in Nigeria, we are now in a situation where the Naira has fallen so much due to mismanagement that the salary of an academic is it's precarious to succeed on that alone in Nigeria. But the fact that one has not made that financial breakthrough, as they say in academia, as they say in Nigeria, doesn't necessarily mean that one is not a successful academic. Àrùn tí ń ṣe abọ́yadé, gbogbo ọlọ́ya ní í ṣe.
Tó ń ṣogójì ló ń ṣọ̀ọ́dún.
Bẹ́ẹ̀ ni.
Tí ń ṣe abọ́yadé, gbogbo ọlọ́ya ní í ṣe.
Yes, the problem of the economy not being enough for people to survive on their salaries affect the whole of Nigeria. So that alone cannot be the mark the hallmark of success for an academic.
Thank you very much. Viewers at home, I've been engaging Professor Kola Abimbola, an illustrious son of Oyo, the Ajaguna, Ogun, Agbaye. Baba, tẹ́ bá gbà ńlá yìí ni, àgẹ̀rẹ̀ ni ìbá gbé pàdé yín. Tí Ọlọ́run ṣe ọjọ́ náà, ọjọ́ rẹ̀ tí ẹ̀yin ọmọ sùnjálá, tèmi ọmọ sánmọlẹ̀ tí ń sì máa lo àgẹ̀rẹ̀ fún yín. Àjíǹde ara ọmọ jẹ́ o, a rí yín pẹ́pẹ́pẹ́pẹ́. Now, of course, I would want to welcome questions from our viewers at home. So the floor is open for remarks, questions, and answers from our viewers at home. Thank you very much for this session. Àjíǹde ara ọmọ jẹ́, Ọlọ́run jẹ́ ká rí yín pẹ́ o.
Àṣẹ o, àṣẹ wà.
So over to Professor Egbedokun. If we have questions from our audience, our viewers, let them raise their hands and let's assign them numbers. Thank you very much, Professor. Báwa kí bàbá wa o. Ọlọ́run jẹ́ mi fún wa o. A rọrùn wọn ṣaṣọ pẹ́. Ìgbà ilé ọmọ alé sí àwọn ilé ọmọ alé sí o.
Àṣẹ o.
Ẹ kéré délé, ẹ ní rásájò. Ẹ ní rásòkò wájẹ o.
Àṣẹ o.
Professor Egbedokun, are you there?
Yes, I am here. Yes, I'm here. And thank you for such an engaging conversation. I've been enjoying the insight of Professor Kola Abimbola. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is open. If you have any question, please indicate by raising the digital hand in Zoom and we'll allow you to ask your question. I can see Dr. Abiodun Adeshina has a question. I would suggest that we take it one by one. Sometimes questions beget questions. We have about 30 minutes thereabout for questions. So once I see a hand, I will just indicate, and please unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question. Dr. Abiodun Adeshina, you have the floor.
I want to appreciate Professor for that insightful response to those questions asked. But there is this issue.
Gbọ́yé dáadáa o, ó round here.
Dr. Adeshina, we have lost you. Can you?
I am appreciating the responses you have been giving to the question that was raised by the moderator.
Dr. Adeshina. I think it might be something with the connection. Are you able to type your question in the chat, if that's possible, so I can read it out? I will see it. If you are able to type it, please go ahead and do that, because I think it's something with the connection. We had when you greeted Baba the first time, just when you were asking your question was when it went off, and the same thing has happened the second time.
I can hear you. I can hear you clearly here. Can you hear me audibly?
Now we can hear you. So stop greeting Baba now and just go to the question, because it seems like the greeting is...
Yes, the question I'm raising is premised on what was raised at a conference at OHU last year, November, as regard AI. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Now, not anymore. Dr. Adeshina, I would strongly suggest that you type your question in the chat so that at least we can move along with a few other questions, please. There is a question from Ola Dipupo Mobos, who has also raised, is it his or her hand? Ola Dipupo, if you could go ahead, please. you have the opportunity to speak rather than me reading out the question on your behalf. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, the anchor and our speaker. Without wasting time, I want to believe you have appreciated the speaker for us. So let me go straight to my question. I want to ask question and also react to the issue of TED Fund stopping foreign scholars. By virtue of my position, I am privy to at least one of the reasons why TED Fund stopped it. And it is owing to the fact that majority of our scholars who benefited TED Fund sponsor to study abroad are refusing to return home, despite the fact that they have a bond to return to their host colleges and serve for a number of years, if at all they are willing to leave. But majority of them after graduating would not come back to the country to benefit the country that have given them the opportunity to study abroad. This is one of the reasons why it was stopped. Now, can we now say that it is still a stupid idea on the part of the TED Fund or government to stop this? Or is there any other thing that could have done to forestall this from happening? Thank you.
Absolutely. It's like curing the wrong wound, wrong illness. If Nigeria's health system, Nigeria's educational system, Nigeria's refuse collection system, if it's all well and good, people will want to come back home. So we cannot just assume that because you are a Nigerian, you have to have a kind of thick skin that means that you will sacrifice everything and want to come back home. The point I'm making is that stopping funds like this from encouraging the education and development of Nigeria, knowing full well that we don't have the resources to galvanize this in Nigeria, is ignoring the fundamental problem with Nigeria. There is rampant, fundamental corruption across all levels in Nigeria that no one is addressing adequately. Until we plug that and make Nigeria a better place, people will always find ways to live if they can live. It's a simple point of nature.
Thank you so much, Prof. Well, I would like to come back to that point a little later, but let's give opportunity to Dr. Shakirat Adeshonga, whose hand is raised. Dr. Adeshonga, please unmute yourself and ask your question. Dr. Adeshonga, you have the floor. Dr. Adeshonga, if you are speaking, you are muted. We can come back to you. In the meantime, Babatunde Okediji, are you able to unmute your microphone and ask your question?
Okay, good evening, huh? Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening. Please go ahead.
Okay. Prof, thanks so much for a very insightful conversation. My question is that you talk about tripod of academics, which is teaching, research, and community service. So my question is that the community service, is it limited to academic community, or we are talking about Joe community here? And if you are talking about Joe community, how do the system affect the community service? Nigeria is a case study, sir.
Thank you so much for that. Again, the problem with standardization is that they define criteria across board, and then different institutions have to localize them. So, for example, in the United Kingdom, they have a whole country-based approach to how to interpret each of these different nodes. What counts as impact? right? Work out as research. They divide journals into various types of categories. So each institution or each country, depending on whether it's a system that operates like that of the US or Nigeria, where various institutions might have the ability to define in their own ways, we need to define more what counts as impact or community service, period. And in some institutions, community service will be localized and focused on the community within the university. Some will include community writ large, which might include even international work that people do. So there is no fixed answer to that. It depends on how each institution or each country decides to localize or put flesh to these general standards.
Thank you, sir. I would quickly go back to, I'm trying to find my chat box now. We had Dr. Abiodun Adeshino, whose microphone didn't seem to be working well the other time. So I'll read out his question. So he says, my question, when will the African-initiated Oracle become commercialized like the AI? So AI, artificial intelligence. What efforts are put into the institutions, industry policy partnership for African Oracle to be proliferated as AI?
I don't think it's possible. The whole point of AI is the A in the I, the artificial. So if by oracle, you are talking about things like Ifa divination, Ifa has at the heart of it a human interpretative context that can never ever be taken away. But we can have a fusion. So at Ifa University, for example, what we do is that the traditional way by which Ifa is studied is as an apprentice, where you be with your Babalawo or Yanifa, live with them, in which you learn when they are performing divinations, you recite with them. All of those parts of the repetitive stuff can be augmented by having a database that will have Ifa poems that are recorded in a multi-dimensional fashion, audio, video, and on paper. And that you can follow up on your own time. So we can have a fusion, augmentation, but with something like IFA in particular, it can never be reduced to something fully artificial.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. Dr. Shakirat Adeshonga, are you able to unmute yourself now? While we wait for that, there's another question in the chat from Waidi Gberu Adebayo. In your view, sir, how do we promote a progressive and collaborative relationship with modern medicine and Yoruba traditional medicine and knowledge?
So we are already doing it. One of the degree programs we have at Ifa University is something called the Bachelor of Orisha Herbology, where we bring students from the US at Ifa University to Nigeria every summer to look at medicine as practiced in or your parts of Nigeria. This is our fourth year, and some of those who are in the program are actually medical doctors, surgeons who are already practicing. So one of the things they are doing is standardizing and developing means by which methods of diagnosis, prescription, and other things that are done in traditional medicine in Nigeria can be standardized in ways that can be useful for people to reproduce them. So it's a long way off, but so far they've done a typology of just under 500 different types of indigenous remedies. So over the next few years, the next step will be to open up facilities, medical facilities where you have Western and indigenous Orisha Yoruba medicine functioning at the same time.
All right, thank you very much, Prof. I'm not seeing any other hand, and I'm not seeing any further question in the chat at the moment. So let me take this opportunity to return to the question about debt fund. And I'm returning to it deliberately because I think this is a very important point. And I would like your thoughts on two things, Prof, in relation to that. Many people believe, and I belong to that school of thought, that exposure is critical to developing a strong academic track record. So exposure within local networks, as you have alluded to, and international exposure as well, going for conferences or studying abroad. I mean, I know that from firsthand experience that studying abroad, depending on where one goes, can change one's academic outlook completely. You know, the amount of resources you have access to, the quality of mentors you gain access to, and so on and so forth, including financial resources that you may be able to get. So for that reason, I mean, there's also the second school of thought that argues that you know, you can get pretty much everything you want from your location, and then, you know, people who make the patriotism argument that even if you go abroad, as a matter of necessity, you need to return back home. So each of those are not necessarily too extreme in their own right. So one might be able to find a balance between the two. But the first aspect where I wanted your thoughts, Prof, is the stance of the government of Nigeria. The argument that when people leave, they don't return, as an earlier questioner has answered. And then the reaction of the government is to say that, okay, TED Fund will no longer sponsor foreign studies. As you have said, Prof, that is probably not the most appropriate way, because it then seems like a blunt, all-encompassing reaction to the misdemeanor of the few. It does not necessarily imply that every person who wants to gain access to these to TED Fund opportunities will go and not return. So what I'm keen to understand from your position, Prof, from your view, is what alternative policy recommendations could one give to government to deal with this kind of situation, because it's a valid issue. I know friends who work in universities in Nigeria who have to begin to work like foremen, you know, one person doing the job of 4 people, simply because their colleagues got access to TED Fund or other foreign, you know, foreign scholarship opportunities and so on. They refuse to resign in their home institution. And so the home institution is not able to hire more people, you know, hire replacement. And yet they are not physically present to do the job they've been hired to do. So they remain on the payroll at home, whereas they are building a career elsewhere and putting other people's career at risk at home. So is there an alternative policy recommendation that one could make for government? How better could government deal with this problem? So that's one aspect of it. The second aspect is for the young academics who behave in this way. I personally think it is the wrong way to behave. What message would you have for them?
Okay. Let's start with the government. I think that's where the problem lies. Let's call a spade a spade. When you have a government, Nigeria, when we look at the history of Nigeria, since the 60s up till now, Nigeria has generated trillions of dollars from the sale of crude oil. Nigeria should not be a country where there is no refuse collection in almost all parts of Nigeria. There are parts of Nigeria where they don't have electricity. Running water is a thing of the past in most of Nigeria. So this same government that has fundamentally and radically mismanaged the funds, and I know that there are different people who've come and go, but it's still the government. cannot try to solve the problem it created by not dealing with that problem and making things more inconvenient and more difficult for the people. That is the real problem. Until we make Nigeria a place where is a sane place for anyone to live. And by that, Nigeria, what I mean is that Nigeria is not a banana republic where there are no resources, where we don't have natural resources, where we don't have expertise. The simple point is Nigeria should not be the way it is now, period. And we have absolutely everything to catapult Nigeria into a first world country within a few years. So until these people who are in government and mismanaging and are not doing anything to make Nigeria a better place get their act in order, the recourse should not be to prevent people from having access to funds. The second other point to bear in mind is that academia is a labor of love in the sense that people who go into academia as their primary means of profession are not expecting that they are going to become millionaires. They are not expecting that they are going to be rich. How difficult should it be for a country like Nigeria to create a good, sanguine environment for people to live in? If we don't produce that kind of environment, turning around and blaming people for finding an opportunity to live a better life and not coming back, we can talk about the fact that they violated their contracts and they did not fulfill the terms of their agreement. But if you are leaving your home every morning, leave your door wide open, park your car in front of your house, leave the gate open, leave the key in the car, and people come and steal your car, and you start blaming the thief. Of course, we can blame the thief, but the point also is that you have some responsibility. So my own view is that this approach is a knee-jerk reaction that doesn't tackle the fundamental problem of Nigeria. Nigeria is not a country that should be like a banana republic, given the wealth of resources and revenue Nigeria has the capacity to generate. What's happened to our millions? Who stole them? What are we doing with them? That's a more fundamental question we need to address.
Well, thank you so much for that. That's very nice to hear. I'm still interested in the other part of my question, which is, what do we say? You know, two wrongs don't make a right. So, and I agree with your position, the message you are sending to government. But what message should we also send to individuals who know that their exit, you know, in a way that their exit is done in a way that jeopardizes the progress of other people? If I am hired to do a job, I know that I'm no longer available there to do it. And I know that I'm already building a career elsewhere in a different locality. Why don't I just exit so that other people can be hired and lighten the load on my friends and colleagues that I am leaving behind? And I can say, Prof, that this will be the position of many people as well. And this is I believe that this is the direction that the government is coming from.
My response to that will be that it's the same problem, right? It's the same lack of abilities to deal with the situation and putting it on the victims. It's like victimization. How difficult will it be to have a simple rule that if someone goes out on a third fund of some sort and the person is supposed to come back and doesn't come back within 1 year, we sack that person and we give the job to someone else? Just write that into the rules of what they are doing. So if you don't come back after a number of period, your job is taken away, period. Isn't that simple enough?
That's quite straightforward, Prof. Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Shakirat Adeshonga, I understand you're having issues on muting yourself. I have tried. Now, I made you a co-host, even if only that would help you to unmute your microphone, because I know you wanted to comment on this interesting discussion about tech fund. Dr. Rashid Garuba, I know that you also want to ask a question. Are you able to unmute yourself now? Either of Dr. Adeshonga or Dr. Garuba, who can unmute first? Just go ahead when you are able to do it.
Thank you, moderator.
Okay.
Let me commend the brilliant presentation of our professor. The God Almighty for following the wisdom. Sir, I want to ask a question as regard to payment for publication. Is it normally acceptable in academics? Number one. Then number two, how can we have some journals to publish our research work outside Nigeria? Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. Payment for publication often corrupts the system. That's a very simple point. Even though there might be some journals that payment will not necessarily mean that one's article gets published, but the moment payment gets into the mix, raises doubts, it biases the decision of the editors and the publishers. And in an ideal world, no one should pay for publication, period. But there is a more fundamental problem. In some countries, there is some kind of, what can we call it, warped thinking that assumes that international standard is better than national standard. If by definition you claim that anything national is inferior, so that by definition anything international is superior, you are forever downgrading yourself. Journals should not be classified on the basis of national and international standard, period. Because that means that you are by definition saying that anything that is homegrown can never be good enough. Which forces people to now look for third-rate so-called journals that are organized by one person sitting in Russia or sitting in Belarus or somewhere, taking your money and just churning anything out. So money in the mix makes it always questionable.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you so much.
So the second aspect of my question related to how can we have access to some institutional outlets to publish our paper outside Nigeria? Thank you, sir.
It depends on your field. There are lots always there. Okay. There are a series of journals. There is the Yoruba Studies Review, for example, which is based in the US. It was started by Professor Falola and a few other people, which is world class. It's blind reviewed. It was Uncle Akintunde Akinyemi was the editor for a while. You know, it's top notch, for world class. So you can always find various avenues for publishing. The Yoruba Studies Review is one. The African Studies Review is also another one. Yeah, plan ahead, submit to some of those that are, you know, stocked by reviewers from top-notch institutions. But the key point is to plan ahead with the good journals. You won't submit something now and expect that you'll be in print in the next few months. You need at least 1 year lead.
Thank you, Prof. I was actually going to mention that point that you mentioned last, that perhaps one of the reasons why it appears as if people place a lot of premium on international publications or publications in international journals is because of the ostensible quality or rigor, and you just mentioned it right there. In many local journals, you can get an article out in a couple of months. I'm using the word many carefully to be specific that it's not in all cases. But so usually when we want quick turnaround, we do quick work and also want to get it out as quickly as possible. That doesn't mean that it always has to take years, even in international journals, but the perceived level of rigor and thoroughness and quality of the peer review process is considered to be a bit better internationally compared to locally. But even then, we are aware of journals in many different countries that are predatory. So one has to educate oneself about how to identify, what is predatory and what is not. I know that Professor Shenkwangade does a lot of work in that regard. I've worked with him extensively in that aspect, and he has trained thousands of early career scholars around the world. And I'm really hoping that one day we'll be able to have a panel conversation with him and a few other professors in our mix to speak to this issue, because it's not something that we can exhaust in within the short space of the question and answer that we have today. But Professor Kongade, are you there? Do you want to come in at this point? I think this would be a very auspicious moment to bring you in to get your thoughts on this issue that we're talking about, and also generally on our conversation today, before I then return to the Q&A in a few additional minutes.
Okay, thank you so very much, Dr. Gwetokun, for another excellent edition, and Mr. Ayankoso as well. Great conversation there. And I just want to specially thank our distinguished professor, Professor Kola Abimbola. You could listen to him for the next 3-4 hours. You won't be tired. So thank you so much, for sharing your insights on these really important issues and letting us into your journey. I think it's really even especially beneficial for that, because it's not just really talking at us, it's also really telling us what his own journey has been. And very insightful. I mean, I entirely agree with Prof. I agree with your intervention there also, Dr. Wetokun, that on the one hand, I think we have to be committed to growing local knowledge production systems, because and I'm glad you mentioned there'll be a proper session to explore this in full detail, because there's a whole range of things. Also, there's rigor. I think there's a lot of attention to detail, scholarship rigor, quality assurance. We have to admit, is better, but also it's also a capitalist system of knowledge production, you see. And I've been having this conversation with colleagues in my university here and across, the world, really. Elsevier is one of the richest publishers anywhere in the world. Last year, they declared profit after tax of running to billions of dollars. I can't remember the exact number now. And all of that is on the back of the hard labor of scholars who work for free, effectively, reviewers who work for free, editors who either work for free or they are not paid at all. I think there's a problem there, that we have to look at down the line, but at the same time, the rigor is there. I think we need to take that on board with honesty and self-reflection, that on the African continent we can do better. We have the resources to do so. We have the human resources to do so. We just need a change of mindset, a change of system. It's the same thing that has, gone into government. Our government can do better. We have the resources to do better. And I feel that we need to start thinking about how do we have, publishers that are homegrown, that are, African, based publishers that can become as big as the like of Elsevier or Routledge or Taylor and Francis and the rest of it, that are not inward looking, that are going out there to the world. And we have, we have a great number of people in diaspora that can help us to project, our products to the world. So it doesn't have to be that we have African publishers that are, curating journals that are only for Africans in Africa. I think we can turn this around. Just as we talk about the economic system, we talk about manufacturing, the same thing with knowledge production. We can have publishers in Africa that are outward looking. I think that has to be part of the conversation there. But a stopgap to that is what Professor Abimbola has described, that we do have African scholars in diaspora who are launching journals that are, of course, at the moment published, by Western publishers, but they are curated by, African scholars. I think that is important. And I think many of us also need to embrace that challenge, that opportunity to develop our own journal, that will provide more opportunity for scholars based in Africa, but also scholars everywhere else, quite frankly. So I'm associate editor for some journals that are, high-ranking journal, Q1 journals, and I've encouraged, people on the Congress to consider submitting their papers there. But the other side of it also is that, are we supporting the development of our ECRs in terms of, the mentality has to change. Prof has addressed it. If you want to submit your paper and want it to get it published in 2 months, you have a wrong, mindset. I think that's just the simple truth. You have to embrace the right mindset that the kind of articles that are worth being on your CV will take more than 2 months. If it's about the volume, you can go for it, but then, it become an albatross. I was having a conversation with a scholar, a Nigerian scholar, about 2 years ago now. We were reviewing the CV. And we found there and then that majority of the paper, about 30 out of 36 papers that are published, they are the sort of, not just where they are published, but the papers themselves are the sort that, if you were to put it before an international panel and you are looking for a fellowship, it's not going to give you much to work with. And I think that is what we also have to think about, regardless of where it is published. Is the quality of the paper such that when it's assessed anywhere in the world, they will say, wow, we want this person to come, and do their fellowship here, or to come and be a visiting professor here, and so on and so forth. So, but I know that this is just a teaser to a wider conversation that needs to happen later. But if it's of any help, I'm on the board of, several journals. Those who are interested, these are mainly entrepreneurship, strategy, digital transformation teams. So please, reach out and we can have more conversation on that. And there are some training also that I'm involved with. So colleagues who are interested can reach out. But thank you, Dr. Wetokon, and thank you once again, Professor Abimbola, for always generous being with us again and sharing your insights. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me add one quick follow-up on that question of publications outlet. A couple of years ago, some colleagues at Obafemi Awolowo University suggested an idea which will be in effect hopefully by next year. Particularly Professor Fashiku of the Department of Philosophy of Obafemi Awolowo University. At Ifa University, everything is almost online, and we have facilities to create stuff. And to run online journals and ebooks will not cost us more than $500 extra because the facilities are already there. So what we are doing now is building up a bank of journals from various universities. OAU, people from OAU have already agreed to 3 main journals that come out of OAU. And we are going to bring a consortium of journals that come out of institutions from various parts of Africa. And by next year, when it's out, there will be about 100 or so different journals that are produced by institutions, but will all be published e-version alone on Ifa University space. And then This with the approach is also that it will be something like a sociological network. So any academic that is in an institution that has a journal from their university there will have access to everything for free. So that will bypass, at least help in alleviating some of the problems we have with access to real knowledge.
Okay, Prof, we lost you for a bit.
No, no, I think, Prof was fine. I think he has finished.
Okay, then it must have been me. Okay, sorry about that. Must have been me. I did see a hand, but unfortunately, we are out of time. And in fact, quite nicely, the gentleman has put down his hand. So I'm sure that we all have, we know how to reach out to Prof on the Oyo Scholars Congress, on the platform. Please feel free to reach out to him. I didn't ask him before saying this, but I know that he will graciously agree. Please feel free to reach out and ask questions and follow up on the conversation today. Once again, I want to thank you on behalf of the Oyo Scholars Congress, Professor Kola Abimbola, for your time, for being so generous, with your insight as well. And my appreciation goes to everyone who has been able to make it. For those who have not been able to make it, as I said, we live streamed this on YouTube, and I'm going to put the link on our WhatsApp group for everybody to follow right after we wrap up the session today. So we will be back on the last Friday of next month, which is the last Friday of the month of May. May I quickly confirm what date that will be? That is the 30th of May, with another distinguished personality with whom we're going to be having a conversation on a different theme. But hopefully before then, if not before, shortly after that, we will be having this panel conversation around how to elevate the publication profile, of individuals, how individuals can plan their own publication pipeline such that they build a solid track record. It has occurred to me that it's about time for us to do that, because during the first two editions of this In Conversation series, this matter came up. So you would understand where I'm coming from when I say it's about time. So we have said it once, we have said it twice. Now we are saying it the third time. So as it is said, out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, or out of the occurrence of 2 or 3 editions of our conversation, this matter can be confirmed that this is a conversation that we really need to plan, and we will surely put that in the calendar as soon as possible. So once again, I want to thank you very much, Prof, and everyone who has been part of this conversation today. And I joined the moderator, Mr. Ayankoso, to say about Kibabao. Wípé àfi ìkíni ránṣẹ́ àgbà nìtàn lórílẹ̀ á máa rí yín bá o. Ẹ ṣeun, a dúpẹ́ púpọ̀. And I want to wish everyone a very nice evening and see you again in the month of May. Bye for now.